When I was 25, I lost my mom. She had been sick for a while, but her death was just kind of a shock to my father and I. You know, I'm an only child. I'm from Long Island, New York. I was still living in New York at the time at home, and I just went through a pretty rough time after her loss, especially those first few years, where I fell into like a pretty severe depression, you know, trouble getting out of bed, trouble bathing, unable to work. And I sought therapy and I went on meds, and that helped. But I still was over time, and eventually, especially after my father he met another widow, he married. And while I was happy for him, it was a hard time in my life because I was forced out of my childhood home that I had lived in for like my whole life. And I was in a new apartment, which is supposed to be a happy time, and it was a really dark time for me. And so at that time I was in New York, and now I'm in Michigan. What brought me to Michigan was graduate school. I've been here 5 years. But to go back, so I was in a dark place, and I began to pray the rosary one day. And after that, I found myself, you know, going to church, going to mass. But before all that, I went to confession, and I had, you know, one of those big confessions that, you know, you hear people talk about, letting a lot out, a lot of guilt over things I didn't feel I could be forgiven for, which now I know is a ridiculous thing to think, but at the time, that's what I thought. And so after that, I started going to mass. I went to a healing mass, and I had an experience where I really felt Jesus' presence in my life at that moment in a way I never had, and it changed my life. You know, he changed my life. And from that point on, I started going to young adult events at the time I was 30, so I was going to a lot of those, and I just had a real hunger to learn more about the faith, which led me eventually to Detroit. And 5 years ago when I came here, I wanted to go to an evening mass, and I lived downtown, and I found myself at Shrine because it was one of the closest evening masses to me. And I came here, and this felt like the place that was supposed to be my parish. So I kept coming, and eventually I just finished my 4th year volunteering with the youth group here, which has been an unbelievable blessing that I couldn't have imagined the way it would have turned out in my walk here and in my schooling. So in the end, just for me, I really feel like God and others, but mostly God is the one that really brought me to where I am now. I think I'm proof that he can take someone that was really broken and really turn it around and turn it into someone who's, you know, just glorifying his name. And I challenge you to go to adoration, because that's one of my favorite ways to pray, and it'll change your life for the better.